marked as
There we go.
All right, now, sorry about that.
That's okay. Little minor technical difficulties, but we appreciate everyone joining us today and being on the call for this talk session. So if you don't know Joshua Swindle, he is our guest contributor today. So Joshua has a background. Not only is he the regional sales manager based out of Nashville, Tennessee, but he has a creative and a design background. So if y'all haven't met Joshua, he's on the call. He's going to be talking today. But when I worked with him in Florida, Joshua had experience in Alabama and in Florida as an Addy Award winner. So if you're not familiar with the Addy Awards, it's Advertising Federation Awards. So he's a gold winner and silver winner. Websites, I think there's video, display, social media ads, all kind of different concepts out there. So we thought he would be a great person to help give feedback and talk about creative processes, not just from a designer standpoint, but you all, what you're experiencing every day as you're in the field and when you're talking to your clients, you're trying to come up with marketing campaigns. We know sometimes we often hear,
washing your hands and washing the box.
I think
So wash your hands.
you guys make sure you're on mute. And yes, please wash your hands. But one of the reasons that we wanted Joshua to help today is we oftentimes hear from reps, or I hear from reps, I'm not a designer. That's not what I went to school for. I'm not that creative person. I don't know what to tell an artist. Sometimes when I get creative back, I don't know what's wrong with it, but I know it missed the mark. It's not what I expected to see. So we're going to navigate that a little bit. We're going to talk about some process today. And I think one of the things that sometimes we miss the mark on is as reps, we forget that we can be creative too. Even though we're not the ones designing ads or shooting TV commercials, we're not creative directors, we can still be creative. And one of my favorite stories about in a previous life when I worked with Mr. Swindle was him and a rep shooting a radio commercial at a car lot inside an F-150 with a Ford owner. I think I got that story right. Am I remembering that correctly, Joshua, that you guys shot this or you recorded it and then you used it for radio spots and you built a video using that as the voiceover out of a pickup truck, right?
It turns out luxury F-150s are great sound booths, and his office was very noisy and there was nowhere else that we could really shoot it or record it. And we just used one of his new vehicles, one of the ones that was part of the campaign as well. So being scrappy to try to get some of these assets completed, I mean, that was our best move, and we just did it the best that we could, and I mean, it turned out fantastic. So I mean, especially the more luxury models, they're essentially soundproof on the inside. So I mean, it worked out beautifully.
Yeah. So if I remember this correctly, the rep actually wrote the talk track for the auto dealer, right? And then you guys went out and bought a fairly inexpensive microphone that you could carry around, and you guys took a microphone, an iPhone, and yourselves and a piece of paper with this written script out to shoot this radio commercial, which I just found fascinating. And what a way to be creative and help in a different way our customers, because for the folks on this call who don't know, we don't have any radio stations. So it was a way to help our client at the time fulfill a need for radio and not have to pay for those extra spots, but also for us to take that audio and help incorporate it into a video commercial that we were going to be advertising. So I thought that was genius.
It helped our campaign as well, because some additional radio spots helped with the kind of atmosphere we were creating in that local market to sell these vehicles. So getting our creative in other venues and outlets, I always see as a great compliment when someone wants to use assets that we generate in other places, but also it just helped the overall performance of what we were trying to accomplish with that client. So it was a win-win.
Now I remember, so I think the voiceover that you guys, you shot a couple different ones, but one was for a Mustang. And I remember it being a fairly masculine commercial video, geared towards men, was talking about the engine of the car, and it was a great commercial. But then there was a different twist, and you knew that we needed to target females. So can you talk a little bit about how you pivoted and you went from focusing on one vehicle, but you marketed to two different individuals? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Ooh, Connor's got some creative up too. I love this.
So I'm very proud of this campaign because it was also the first time I won a gold Addy award instead of just, silvers. This was my first gold, and especially in an automotive category, sometimes it's hard, to get recognition for those, but I mean, it really resonated with, everyone. It's a very successful campaign. I mean, they sold a lot of these vehicles as well. So when we're building out campaigns and different targeting, sometimes we don't take advantage of being able to split out the different audiences that we're going after. So we can target men, we can target women, and I just wanted to make sure that we were delivering relevant, creative to these different audiences, because different things motivate different people. So we had the video and the other, creative spots that were talking about the raw power of the V8, in this vehicle, but giving, the female audience something different and something special that spoke to them, and using our technical prowess to, deliver multi-layered campaigns. I mean, these are just taking advantage of the capabilities that we already have, and, seeing how different ads and different creatives affect different people.
Well, I knew it was definitely a campaign that I enjoyed. I am more of an SUV female. I'm not a sports car female, but I loved the creative concept around "She Always Wanted a Pony." I thought that was such an emotional driver. It takes you back to that childhood sentiment. So that was one of the things that I love. So how do you come up with that? As a designer, what does that mental creative process look like? Because for someone like me, I would just plop the car in front of them and say, hey, look at this great price point. But that's why I'm not a designer. So what does that look like for someone with your mindset?
We take for granted that the click-through or the website's going to have a lot more of the detailed product information that would answer a lot of the questions, and those aren't always what's going to inspire somebody to want that product in the first place. So with display creative, we're always trying to generate the spark that that launches the rest of the consumer shopping experience. So what's something quick and also can pull on some heartstrings, can gain somebody's attention, right? And just something that's short that will spark some kind of emotion or some kind of desire for us to learn more. So I mean, there's no product information in that ad. It's just we're trying to to pull out that emotion that would want somebody to want to learn more. So we're not just targeting auto intenders, we're trying to create auto intenders as well.
Well, I love that. So I know I've heard you say this to teams for several years, that we're not selling rectangles. And I always love that phrase because it makes so much sense, and it's such a visual that you can relate to. We're not selling rectangles and just putting them in front of people. But you mentioned about a website, and that there needs to be that connectivity there, that we take for granted sometimes that if we show an ad, somebody's going to be able to find the information that they need on a website. So how do you help make that connectivity more sticky as a designer? Or what as reps should, in sales and people and marketers, what should we be looking for? What should we be thinking about? What ideas or tips can you give us, or examples of when creative and a website work really beautifully together so that we get a good conversion?
So one thing is, even with that last campaign, we were focused on a specific product or a specific service line. So if you're drilled in on, something a little more focused and more specific, it allows us to have deeper conversations with the clients around how performance of this campaign is doing, right? So, I mean, a lot of times I hear us say as an organization that it's not just about clicks or, you know, click-through rate, but if our creative isn't more focused around a specific product or service line, that's really all that we can talk about, right? Is, you know, what are the clicks, what's the click-through rate? So having a more specific, you know, objective that we're trying to accomplish, like selling more Mustangs, is going to open up other conversation points, like, are we getting more people looking at this product on your website, right? So we've been running this display campaign for 90 days. Are you getting more calls about it? Are you getting more test drives? So having something specific in the creative helps us have deeper conversations with clients about, you know, the success and the impact that we're having on their business. All right. So the other component of that is that image that everybody just saw, that was also like the header image on their website. So when I see that image on Facebook or on the USA Today network, and then I open a new tab, do a Google search, get to their website, that's also going to be the first thing I see when I walk in the front door. So, I mean, it's another kind of brand impression, right? So that I remember, but it also delivers on the idea of trust, right? So everything kind of looks cohesive, everything's unified, you know, that experience of recognizing something, you know, even if it's in those few seconds, seeing the ad and then the website matches that. I mean, that's important for, you know, conversions of our campaigns, so that people will continue to dig a little bit deeper, learn more about the product, et cetera. So that would be one of my, you know, biggest kind of tips would be, whatever campaign we're running, let's make sure that on the homepage or pretty close, it's almost another image of that creative on the website, so that people know that they're in the right place, right? Like, we want consumers to, you know, feel like it's a trusted site, and that there's brand unity, and that it's all one kind of machine, right? Like, it wasn't an accident that they saw the ad, you know, they're in the right place. And I mean, that helps just tremendously with conversion rates as well.
No, I love that. I know that when we started entering this COVID work from home status, and we were working with businesses on changing their messaging, I remember there was a Lazy Boy campaign that I think you and your rep Caroline were working on. And I remember I saw the initial creative that came back from the design team, and I thought, oh, that little boy is so cute. And the messaging was cute, and it was a carousel ad that was built out for Facebook. But you guys went in a different direction. You changed strategy, and part of that was the connectivity on the website with that Lazy Boy, and changing directions. So can you talk a little bit about why you felt it was necessary to not use the initial creative that came, and to change direction? Oh, there he is. So that was the initial. Yeah. So kids are working from home too.
So, you know, this is a good ad, but I wouldn't recognize the experience when I clicked through, or, you know, if I went to the specific, you know, website, you know, later after I was on Facebook. So again, making sure that it's almost like calibration, or, you know, the sync between the brand extensions that we're seeing out there in our display creative and what it looks like on the website. And in this case, they have a really strong website. I mean, that first image that you're seeing in the carousel, that's just the image of when you walk in the front door on the website. So I know I'm in the right place. And the designer of that website did a really good job of, you know, just building these squares that kind of walked people through, you know,
so what we're
redesigning.
So what we're seeing now is the revised version, right? So when you say that when you land on the site, now that connectivity is there, this frame that we're seeing on our screens now, that's what you're referring to, that this is the entry point into the website, and that's why you went with that as a first frame.
So, and it will be a lot more familiar. I mean, most of this is screenshots from the website, and especially with, you know, like virtual design services, you know, meeting with one of these designers, you know, over video, so that they can see, you know, the home, and then, you know, give like some design instruction. I wanted it to be very kind of clear what the process is, because I mean, it's got 6 steps. It's pretty complicated. I wanted it to, the repetition of a consumer seeing it, you know, I felt it would be important for, you know, conversions. You know, this is something new that many people may not know about. The opportunity arose because of everything that's happening right now. And it's another lesson around just continuing to push our campaigns to make them better. So when we get something back, how can we make it even better? Because I think what can happen is, you know, we build out these complex proposals, have some great targeting, have all of our audience numbers, got a good share of voice, but we miss that last piece, which is, what are we going to put in front of these people? Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's that difference between a conversion and somebody just kind of moving on, right? So, you know, it just has a lot more power when, you know, that brand is connected and, you know, it's just the launch of a new service. So pushing it to make it better. And, you know, I mean, as you could see, it had a tremendous impact on, you know, what we're putting out there in front of people, and it's currently live right now. So.
Well, and I like that change in thinking. You know, oftentimes when we talk about a paid search campaign, when we structure those, so if we think about automotive, we don't land people if they search for a Ford F-150 on the homepage of a website. We land them right on that product page. So we need to apply that to all of businesses and all of our tactics. If our creative is showing a cute little boy working from home, and we're talking about that, we probably would need to land people on an office furniture page versus their design studio page. So I love that idea of making sure that the creative, the messaging, the emotion that we're trying to spark needs to roll over into what they're seeing once they land in that website. So I think that's great advice to give. So what about, you mentioned that last step, that we often miss that. What are your thoughts and what's your strategy around creative in advance?
So whenever we're, you know, building out proposals, especially bold, you know, proposals where we're asking clients for, you know, pretty robust campaigns, a lot of the data that we supply up front around the audience, that it's going to be a right fit, that our technical capabilities, you know, are really, you know, like top of class and going to be effective for them. The last piece that, you know, I always like to add in, if there's time, building out some kind of, you know, spec creative to where they've seen all of the kind of science part of it, but, you know, utilizing that art to inspire them so that they can see what it's going to look like out there in the wild. And when you can do that perfectly, and, you know, you got enough time in advance, I mean, it helps the conversation around closing and, you know, bringing on a new client. It helps it so much more because you've backed up all the scientific part, and then, you know, to close it with that inspiration, it just helps them say yes a lot easier, right? And selfishly, it also helps with, you know, the launching of the campaign, because we already have that component built. And anytime I've been able to have kind of a spec creative as part of a presentation, it's just made the, you know, better closing rates and just made for better, you know, kind of conversations. Even if they say no, they appreciate the effort, and they, you know, they see that we've thought it all the way through, right? It's not just us talking about technical capabilities, it's us, you know, solving creatively what kind of their challenges are. I mean, inspiring these businesses to take a risk on us, right? And to move some of their advertising dollars with us, it helps shore that up, and, you know, makes them feel good about saying yes to us.
And you and your team got a new win, I think, recently with a new client. You guys used creative to help land that. Can you talk to us a little bit about, because I think that was a very fast moving opportunity, right? It's a university that you guys were bringing on board. It happened during COVID. They needed help. It started off small, and then it added more programs, and nursing got involved. But it was a very rapid process. So can you talk a little bit about how that all unfolded and why you went in the direction you did?
So with bigger opportunities like that, a lot of times you're going to be talking to a representative or, you know, like a director of a department that's going to have to go to other people and, you know, get approval and get buy-in. So being able to show them, here's how much everything's going to cost and here's what it's going to look like, right? And that always, you know, increases that, you know, chance for them to say yes and gives them a chance to see what it's going to look like. Oh, here it is. Man, feels like I built it just 3 or 4 days ago. So when we were building this out, we showed just, you know, an example of creative. And when it's a bigger opportunity, I mean, she provided us with the photos. She provided us with, you know, kind of the copy and everything, but we had to show her something first to where she could, you know, kind of critique it and then make it her own too. So by building this together, you know, we had like extreme buy-in on the client side as well. So it made her feel confident when she was trying to sell this upstream as well. So she had the data to back up, you know, and rationalize the decision, but we had to give her the inspiration to go through the trouble of, you know, launching a new campaign with a new vendor. And, you know, creative just really has the power, you know, for them to see what it's going to look like and, you know, to show this is, you know, this is what we're going with. This is what the campaign is going to look like. And it just helps materialize the idea and, you know, makes them inspired and allows them to see what we're trying to achieve. And I mean, it just works. It just makes it much more effective.
You, on the example that Connor pulled up, which is beautiful, you've got that showing on several different devices. And I noticed that on the, she has a pony example too. It was a desktop and a mobile device on Facebook. So is that something that you encourage, is showing it incorporated into those platforms versus just sending over a PDF of the rectangle of the ad?
So I've seen it both ways, and I like, let's say you have 2 slides that's going to, you know, kind of highlight your campaign. The first one may just be, you know, like the square or the rectangle that shows them what's going on. But the next slide is going to be, you know, what it looks like out in the wild. This is the creative in context, right? So something may look good by itself, but it's got to be able to earn attention, you know, with everything else at the same time, right? So it helps them appreciate and understand the context of where their ads are going to be and how good it looks and how good it pops on, you know, like news sites or something like that. So it helps, you know, them kind of dream about it and see it and where it's going to be. So, I mean, I highly recommend, you know, doing that if you can, you know, but both of them, you know, both are good too, but that was the only, you know, this was moving so fast. We just showed her, you know, just like that. Right. So, I mean, it helps.
So for the folks on this call who are going, I can't build ads. I don't even know what to say to an artist. I don't know how to get what I want out of creative. I know when something looks great, but I don't know how to get there. Or if I get something that I think missed the mark, I'm not sure how to communicate back. So what advice can you give for how to communicate with designers and how to get the best out of creative? Because the design teams that we work with, you agree, right, that they can do exactly what you can do, that, or close to it.
Well, I mean,
maybe
I was
not all gold Addy and silver Addy winners, but we put out some really good creative from our design teams. So how do we get that same type of creative back?
I mean, and I used to be one of those designers on that team, right? So I can appreciate their position. And I think one of the biggest opportunities for us as salespeople to, you know, kind of get more out of that process and, you know, have a better relationship is the more information that we can share and the more effort we put into, you know, kind of letting them in to, you know, again, context is important. So sharing with your designer, what were the notes from the evaluate needs, right? Because we take for granted that they don't have the connection with the client a lot of times. So it's not as personal to them as it is to us because we've seen the person, you know, describing what they want for their business. So we have to be the steward of that and carry that over to the design team, you know? So the more detailed we can get and the more information that we can provide, that's also going to, I mean, because they have a creative mindset already, we need to exercise that, and we need to, give them enough information and enough of the story to where they can, put themselves there, and they can, put themselves in the mind of the client and in what we're trying to achieve, right? So, in design world, you have, like creative briefs, right? And as much information in there as, you can provide. And we're already taking great notes, right? We're already having to evaluate needs, and we have plan and prepare with clients. So the more that we can share with the designer so that they can see, kind of the full picture, the more they're going to be able to manufacture great work and want, to produce great work for this client, because they can feel, what their hopes and dreams and what we're trying to accomplish with them. So, I think about like target audiences, some of this great information that we're putting in proposals, sharing that over. I mean, that's what's going to, help you get the most out of, your design experiences. Yeah.
So if we're sending over our evaluate needs notes, so I love that. So target audiences could be in there. Do we go as far as telling an artist the emotion we're trying to capture? Do we go as far as here's how I want the audience to react, or here's where I'm going to send them on a website? Is it that granular of information? Does that help? Are artists really reading that? Does that help inspire them along the way?
I think it could, right? And I don't want a rep to feel like if they're not able to do that, then they're not going to be able to, go through this process the same way. It certainly helps, right? Like what we're trying to elicit out of, somebody when they see this, right? Like, that's going to be helpful. But just in a more like practical terms, going, doing research and trying to find examples of the same vertical in the same industry. What are other examples that other businesses have done that, I kind of like? So pulling, 3 or 4 examples of what you like, 3 or 4 examples of maybe what you don't like, all of that, all of those data points, that's going to help a designer know kind of what we're looking for, right? To where we won't be surprised when we get that first round of creative back, because it should be looking more in line with some of the examples that we provided, right?
Where do people get examples like that? So should they go to Google, or?
That's a great question. I mean, so many times I've gone to real estate, creative campaigns in Google, and a lot of times you'll find, really good print ads, right? But, 2 of the places I like to go, especially, as a designer, what's that process? The first process is going to be, research what's out there right now in the market. Is it something that I can just steal, right? Like Picasso says, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Is it something I can just lift from another campaign? Because if it works and speed is an issue, right, it at least gives me a lighthouse or a North Star to, know this sales rep likes, this kind of example, what are we swapping out? Photo, logo, text, right? I mean, it's enough of a baseline, to kind of get started and to cover a lot of distance just in that one revision. So a lot of you guys may be familiar with Moat, MOAT.com. They were known for, kind of heat mapping creative, but just part of their free service when you go, you can type in company names, business names, verticals, and it's just a huge, massive library or an archive of, creative that they're currently running, that they were running last year. That's always a great spot for inspiration. So, I mean, I have thousands of screenshots of, research, from there. One of the new updates that Facebook has done is you'll see a box on a business page profile that says, transparency. So if you click on that and you go through, it will, show you all the creative that they're currently running. So, if we have competitors that we've already loaded up in the, in the grader, I mean, I always go and check what the competitors are doing, maybe, the client that we're talking to, what they're doing. And I mean, those are great places to draw inspiration from as well, because the more we can show a designer, kind of what we like, the better they're going to be able to, kind of mirror that and then start to push it and make it even better.
So we don't have a lot of phone conversations. I mean, unless we're dealing with a very large and complex campaign, a big brand, Not everybody is working with really large businesses. Sometimes we're working with small, locally owned businesses. So we don't necessarily have a phone call or a creative debrief set up with our artists. We're having to rely on transferring information through systems. So what type of recommendation do you have for people on the call? What's the best way to relay that information? How do artists like to receive it? Should we just upload everything as a bunch of attachments? What type of recommendation do you have? Because what I'm hearing is the more successful we make our artists, the more successful they're going to make us with our campaigns. If we put in effort on the front end, it's going to help them produce a better product for us.
So having everything in one document, I mean, if it's a Word document, or like I'm a huge fan of Evernote, but making it to where it's, you know, one single source, almost like a constitution, if you will. This is everything you need to know about this campaign. This is all the data that I have. Here's the conversations that I've had with the client. I mean, just like we would prepare, you know, any Word document, like this is the catalog and, you know, all the information. Here's all the targeting. Here's the notes from that meeting. Here's, you know, the product, or, you know, the very specific, you know, service line that we're trying to go after. Here's some examples that I like. You just throw some screenshots in there. And having the actual website link, I know that sounds silly, but it's so important as a designer, you know, to know that I'm in the right place, because I've built so many campaigns that were not even for the right business because it was something that was similar, or, you know, just, you know, having these basic details and building these kind of, you know, creative briefs, as simple as a Word document, it makes the first revision, like, you cover so much ground, right? So the quicker you can get to something that you kind of like, going through a few more revisions and edits after that, that's how you end up with something that you're really proud of and that is going to be effective for our clients, and, you know, in the long run.
Well, I love that. Well, I appreciate your time today. I know we're doing these mini talk sessions in short little bursts, but thank you for your time taking out for today to show some behind the scenes and some background information on what it's like to be a designer, or how to get the most success out of this. We're going to share this recording out with the team, and hopefully Joshua doesn't mind, but we'll share out his contact information as well if anybody wants to pick his brain or steal ideas from him. But we really appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us, and we will see everybody next week for our third micro moment that we'll be launching. So thank you again, Joshua, and thank you, Connor, and everybody who joined today. We appreciate it.